a sprawling, modern-style Asian city filled with both mystical and advanced wonders. A place where any high school student can pack a massive punch. A place where urban legends hold much more significance than you could imagine. No, not that city. But Kivotos is called an academy city at times. So, what is the true nature of Kivotos and the setting Blue Archive places us in? Welcome to Kivotos, Sensei. Kivotos is a massive city, home to thousands of different academies. This is where you'll be working from now on. It's bound to be very different from the place you called home. You might find it difficult to fit in at first. A massive city home to thousands of different academies. Thousands, really. Well, throughout the game we hear about at least 13. Many schools control their own regions of Kivotos almost autonomously. They have their own rules and law enforcement set by the school, but it seems at some point they do have to answer to the General Student Council, aka the federal government of Kivotos. It seems not every school has this level of control over their own district though. There are probably many schools which are just considered under the control of whatever larger school covers their district. For example, DU Shiratori City is policed by Valkyrie Academy, but it was also home to SRT Academy before it shut down. Hyakyaku's history says it was created through an alliance of many school districts. That's why it's called Allied Hyakyaku Academy. Hyakyaku is based on Japan, so I'm guessing the intention is that, similar to Japanese history, the region experienced a feudalist society before being unified. History, that's right. Kivotos does have a history, although it's not well known among its inhabitants. Kivotos is actually a very old place, not something that was established recently. It's well known that Blue Archive is widely inspired by influential aspects of otaku culture, taking a lot of cues from famous anime and video games, but lesser known is Blue Archive's inspirations based on real mysteries and urban legends. The upgrade materials used to enhance skills are known as OOP arts, out-of-place artifacts. These are real things like the Antikythera mechanism, which implies ancient Greek knowledge of gears as a mechanical tool long before we know them to have become commonplace. There's also references to famous conspiracies like the Abydos helicopter, astral projection, ancient spaceships buried in the desert. So, how old is Kivotos anyway? You are correct, Takanashi Yoshino. This place was a historical relic, left by the student council presidents from hundreds of years ago, but someone repurposed it into a war fortress. Abydos Valley of Kings, Valley of the Student Council, was apparently built hundreds of years ago. And Hinata says this about the St. Justina Council. The St. Justina Council, the guardians of the commandments who vanished hundreds of years ago. The St. Justina Council was there for the founding of Trinity, and although they disappeared hundreds of years ago, they already had miniguns and even some kind of giant energy cannon. There's also a ruined modern city within the Millennium District. It pretty much looks like a present-day modern city, but the level of decay here seems to be beyond just a few decades. I wouldn't say even Pripyat looks this bad, but it is interesting that not all of the color has faded off of the buildings. Some of the damage looks like it was more from a sudden disaster than a gradual decay. Despite the city only appearing modern, the level of tech here is actually really high. This is where the game development department finds Aris, an android more advanced than any other robot we see in the game. But was this place really part of Kivotos, or does it predate this place being known as Kivotos? Kivotos is the Greek word for ark. You'll find that right at the top of the wiki. But there's also the Ark of Atrahasis. Utnapishtim's ship is another ark. There's also the Ark of the Covenant, aka the Shinum Chest, which is not an ark in the same way that a ship is, but it's still called an ark. Basically, there's many things in Kivotos referring to arks. The oldest things in Kivotos are likely the artifacts left behind by the Nameless Gods. Utnapishtim's ship, Bina, the Sanctums, or were they left by the Nameless Priests rather than the Nameless Gods? Well, Blacksuit says the false sanctums are technologies established by the Nameless Gods. The 6 towers that appear in Kivotos are like reverse sanctum towers. They are technologies established by the Nameless Gods, mysteries of the Enlightenment that came into being before even the ancient times of this world. They'll spread the chroma to this world to turn every nightmare and mystery in Kivotos into a terror-filled reality, as will the Wolf God. Exactly. Before the world as we know it today, we had the Nameless Gods, the sublimes of their time. Only the faintest wisps of their existence can be identified in the largely mysterious annals of Kivotos. What we do know of these gods is how they manifested themselves. Typhoons, cliffsides, trees and lightning, the list goes on. They appeared as crude forms of nature, but in reality embody the mystery and terror of Genesis itself. There's very little I can say of the nameless priests who worship them, except that they harbor no kind feelings towards Kivotos and its residents. And while we've seen neither hide nor tail of the priests themselves, their technology remains littered throughout these lands. Therein is where my interests lie, because as we've already seen, their technology fetches a high price on the black market. That's interesting. When it comes to the nameless gods, only the faintest wisps of their existence can be identified, and they manifested themselves as crude forms of nature. You mean something like a burning bush? That lines up with how gods are identified in our reality. You could say, for example, that the god of the sea, Poseidon, is revealed when his anger manifests as a tempest and a high tide. But about the priests who worship them, their technology remains littered throughout these lands? Silly me for even asking, but who exactly are these nameless priests, Blacksuit? Even I understand the basics. Beatrice's ability to protect royal blood, the cruise missile strong enough to destroy the cathedral. They are all gifts from these nameless priests, no? So, putting my heads together, I have gleaned their technology makes that of Kivotos look like a child playing in the mud. You're correct. The nameless priests were once masters of a world predating Kivotos. So this technology of theirs includes things like cruise missiles that can destroy churches. That's not very advanced, to be honest. It's nothing like a space battleship or an android that can telekinetically assemble a satellite. Unless things like Utnapishtim's ship and the Sanctums are OOP arts of the nameless priests, it seems like there's a distinction to be made between nameless priest tech and nameless god tech. I mean, Utnapishtim's ship couldn't have been made by the nameless priests. The enemies invading from outside Kivotos as well. Neither the nameless gods nor the forgotten gods would know them. An incomprehensible entity, it seems to be copying the same abilities of the Ark of Atrahasis, built by us, the nameless gods. I wonder if you know, Princess. The artifact you are currently standing on is an imperious anti-Ark weapon created by our enemies of the past to defeat us. Your friends will never be able to decipher it. Do you understand, Princess? You are aboard your most dangerous nemesis. You must run, Princess. Flee as quickly as you can. The Princess obtained the key, and the Ark is ready. At the request of the nameless priests, a new sanctuary will be built on this land. With its arrival, all mysteries will be archived for the first time. Ki identifies herself and Aris as the nameless gods and the builders of the Ark of Atrahasis. Also, she is worshipped by the priests, so they can't be the ones who built Utnapishtim's ship, since it's a weapon meant to destroy her. Well then, who did? Maybe it's those forgotten gods she mentioned. Great, so now we've got at least 3 ancient advanced civilizations to keep track of. Also, a new sanctuary. Did you mean sanctum? Oh, you did mean sanctum. I'm sure glad that very important detail wasn't butchered in the translation. On the note of translation issues, here's another one. Intergalactic battleship Utnapishtim. The word is Uchu Senkan. It means space battleship. Yeah, it's only slightly different, but in changing it, the reference to the famous anime space battleship Yamato is lost, which is like the whole point. Anyway, Ki says a new sanctum. To me, that sort of implies that the old sanctums were already there when she moved into action. That's a bit interesting. Okay, we're starting to form a picture of Kivotos' history now, or at least who it was inhabited by before. But how did it come to be as it is now? And what rules govern this reality that anyone with a human form must be female? And even those girls have non-human features. I have no idea. But it seems like at some point these mystics came to rule as the dominant civilization. And the nameless priests, the last remnants of the civilization that once was, went into hiding. Maybe because they're not bulletproof like the mystics and the animal people. The priests don't have halos and they seem human, although there's no way to know for sure. Maybe they're lizard people. Well, is there anything outside Kivotos? Yes, actually. In making this video, I reviewed the Japanese version of the game by watching Sana Notori's streams of the story. And at one point she brought up this hilarious chart that I'm guessing she drew herself. Let's throw it in Google Translate. Sensei came from outside Kivotos. So did Gematria. Although that doesn't mean they came from the same place as you, which is why she had them blocked off. Somewhere outside there is also the chroma, which Seiya witnesses during her astral projection. Besides that, Miyako actually tells us in a text that there are animals outside Kivotos that are being smuggled in. And that's really all we hear about outside Kivotos, very sparse. But even just that text from Miyako is very valuable. We know that there's life outside Kivotos, and we know that there are people who are able to enter from the outside, legally or not. Shiroko Terror also asks Sensei to leave Kivotos at one point. The world, the universe revolves upon unbreakable laws. The future is predetermined. You struggle in vain. I must ask you to leave Kivotos without protest, without struggle. I do not wish to harm you. Not all futures are predetermined. If you leave, the future where I must shoot Shale Sensei will not come to pass. She's saying this because she doesn't want to kill him, meaning leaving Kivotos isn't a death sentence. However, this is also just a meta way of saying stop playing the game so you don't have to see the bad end. Hoshino mentions the idea of leaving Kivotos a couple times. A recruiter has been coming after me for a while now. Become a Kaiser PMC mercenary for life in exchange for Obito's debt being paid off. That's the long and short of the terms. Not a bad deal, eh? They must value the skills of a wily old veteran like me. And a foreclosure task force will be fine. I'll have to leave Obito and Kivotos altogether, but it doesn't matter. This is what I get for being a stubborn old mule. Let me take responsibility. So if Hoshino were to sign a contract and become a Kaiser Merc, apparently they would have been able to take her from Kivotos. This also tells us that powerful mercs are needed to be stationed outside Kivotos. What fallout? I go in, deny the Obito Student Council, and then I won't be vice president anymore. I'll dismantle the private equity fund, destroy the train cannon, and none of it will fall on the foreclosure task force. What kind of solution is that? What about you? Well, for me, it'd be suspension, a chat with the corrections bureau, expulsion. I guess leaving Kivotos would be the final step. In this case, Hoshino implies that she would be exiled as punishment. So apparently exile is an option for particularly troublesome people. It's interesting that the infamous 7 prisoners were all kept imprisoned when exile was an option. I'm willing to bet that exile is a punishment only for those who break contracts. Contracts hold supernatural power in Kivotos and must be upheld. Even Sensei follows the rules, no matter how dire the situation. So what's the purpose of Kivotos anyway? Well, education, of course. It's an academy city. The entire economy is built around the schools, and the schools run everything. Not only that, but the students are given a very high level of autonomy. They have their own homes, work their own jobs, and even handle all of their own government and policing. The president of Kivotos is just another student. The sight of a human adult at all is incredibly rare though. There are animal people adults who work jobs, own businesses, and accumulate wealth, but they're never seen attending school, and they don't occupy any positions in government. They can contribute to Kivotos economically, but they don't have any say. Probably because Kivotos isn't for them. Kivotos is meant for the students. Animal people are allowed to be there for economic reasons only. But where are all the human adults? Well, graduation probably means leaving Kivotos. Are you saying there's some kind of mastermind behind all this, eye patch? No, we can no longer call her the mastermind. She has long since graduated and left Kivotos. Graduated? Yes. She was Gehenna's Tyrant Emperor, the one who covered Kivotos in darkness 2 years ago. Gehenna's Tyrant Emperor, who covered Kivotos in darkness only 2 years ago, has graduated and already left Kivotos. Whether or not leaving upon graduation is required is unknown, but it seems most people are leaving as soon as they graduate. So, how do people get to Kivotos? Are they born there? Black Suit reveals he had knowledge of a Horus before he became Hoshino. I was waiting for you, Horus of Dawn. Obito's, no, the great mystery of Kivotos. I have a proposal for you. Huh? My name is Takanashi Hoshino, Black Suit. I see. Is that what they call you in Kivotos? It's been a long-standing theory now that the students are a sort of reincarnation of the gods of the past. By now that does seem to be accurate on some level. This really needs its own video. But Horus is the Egyptian god of the sky. He has a synthetic eye. He is also the son of Osiris, who dies. He also has a feud with his uncle Set over the right to rule Egypt. If Black Suit knew of a Horus before he became Hoshino, then it might be that the gods are reincarnated into Kivotos as students. I don't want to dive too much into this because this is getting into like schizo rambling levels of speculation. But I wonder if at some point the gods, the sublime, were archived in some sort of ark to survive a catastrophe. And now that that catastrophe has passed, perhaps they are being reincarnated into bodies to repopulate. or maybe just so that they can learn to get along this time. And why is Kivotos set up the way it is? With major responsibility and autonomy placed on what's essentially a bunch of stupid kids. Well, I think Kaya's silly little obsession might actually be a major clue. A superhuman. The outside world might be a dangerous place, and in the wake of a catastrophe there is opportunity. Great leaders and creative people are needed, and Kivotos is like a giant pressure cooker trying to sort out some diamonds. The goal is to create a superhuman capable of leading humanity. Not only is Kivotos a competition of individuals, but also ideologies. This explains why the schools vary so much in terms of societal structure. There's a religious school, an anarcho one, a communist school, and even a technocracy. And all their flaws are displayed throughout the story, especially Red Winter. There's a little danger in doing it this way, since it's very hard to actually get killed in Kivotos. So it's basically like a giant experiment, pinning both individuals and ideologies against each other in order to create powerful leaders and determine what form of society is most effective. There are no maps of Kivotos. Well, there are in universe, but the player isn't allowed to see them. They're always overexposed to hide them. But there's a few things we know for sure. Abydos is a desert. Abydos shares a border with Gehenna, and Gehenna shares a border with Trinity. There's ocean access, somewhere. Red Winter is also very far away and very cold. Hyakyako also has an area known as the Snowfield, although most of the place seems to have an average climate. The districts are incredibly huge. Millennium, for example, is able to contain 3 major cities: the main district, the ruins, and Eridu, with enough distance between them that Ryu was able to build the entire city of Eridu without anyone noticing. Shiroko also says this. It would take months for me to do a complete lap around all of Kivotos. On average, it takes 3 weeks to ride 4,000 kilometers, but I think the design of the riding suits may have been a factor. The statement that Kivotos is just a massive city is starting to feel a bit inaccurate. It's totally a major country. At one point, I was wondering if it's just Europe, and Red Winter really is in Russia, and Gehenna really is in Germany. Well, that wouldn't make sense considering Abydos and Gehenna are supposed to have a border. So it's probably not a landmass that exists anywhere on Earth, at least not currently. Okay, that's the end of the video. If you have any ideas on what Kivotos might be shaped like, I encourage you to try drawing a map using what we know. And if you've got any insight into the nature of the world of Blue Archive, be sure to drop it in the comments below so I can expand my brain with more useless video game trivia instead of something actually important like math or something. Thank you for watching.